everyone, my name is Angela Hart, and I'm a Georgetown Communication, Culture, and Technology graduate student. I spent a little over a year working on my graduate thesis, Do Political Film Adaptations Affect Voter Knowledge? In order to test my hypotheses, I needed to have focus groups and have participants take part in my research process. First, I needed to go through the IRB approval process in order to be granted permission so that I could collect data using focus group members. Once IRB approved my study and overlooked my documents, I was able to tailor my survey for my own research purposes. I needed to have a pre-test and a post-test in order to determine if people learned from the film or had more information post-viewing. In order to determine if participants learned post-viewing, I needed to be able to compare their pre-test and their post-test results. In order to do this, I included a line at the top, and I ended up giving people flashcards labeled 1 through 100 so that they could have a randomized number and put that at the top of both surveys. This way I could match their pre-test to their post-test without them needing to identify themselves, so that if it was just number 13 on the pre-test, I would just look for number 13 on post-test, rather than look for John Smith, or Jane Doe, Jane Doe. I was able to make sure that they remained anonymous, yet still identifiable. I cannot stress enough how important it is when you design a survey. It is extraordinarily important to make surveys visually appealing. I held all of my focus group viewings at night, so by the time everyone started trickling in to go see the film, they were a little tired. I had viewings at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 7:30. Because my viewings were in the evening, people were a little tired. I needed to try and find ways to engage them in the process. I did not use Times New Roman or Garamond or one of the standardized fonts because I did not want my survey to feel like an exam. I thought if people viewed the survey as a test, they'd be more likely to guess or try and finagle their way into getting a correct answer, and I wanted people to be very honest with their responses. Their honesty was extraordinarily important to my study. If someone could not correctly identify someone's political party, I wanted them to acknowledge that rather than guess and try and have a correct answer. If my survey mimicked an exam, chances are they would want to make sure they were correct versus honest. I also made the font size a little bit larger itself, so I ended up using around a 14 size font so that participants could easily read the questions. I did not want anyone to have late night tired eyes and misread a Republican versus Democrat. I needed to make sure my questions were also worded very simply. When designing a survey, you do not want to have someone go back and reread the same question 2 or 3 times because they did not understand it. Part of the IRB process is stating how you're going to be administering these surveys. Then as an academic, I want to make sure that I am not leading the participants in a certain manner. If I try and clarify a question, I do not want to subtly give hints or inadvertently lead them to an answer. I want them to answer in the way that they see fit, not how they need things to be explained. If a survey participant asks you to clarify a question, chances are it was not worded in the best manner. For instance, I had a yes or no question in which I asked if Al Gore conceded on election night. Technically speaking, he called George W. Bush and conceded over the phone, but he did not concede to the American public. I wanted to see if people knew he did not concede to the American public, but since he had already called George W. Bush, I had a couple people raise their hands and ask me to clarify. I ended up pulling that question off of future surveys because I did not want people to be confused or have incorrect results. That being said, I did not reword the question for future use. I ended up pulling it off all of the surveys entirely. All of my participants needed to be asked the same questions. I could not reword one question to suit my own needs. If participants have questions, it is extraordinarily important to understand why there's a red flag in their mind. The best piece of advice I was given was to have a few example responses, so I was able to test beforehand if a certain question was not understood or if somebody did not interpret something correctly. I tested my survey with about 5 or 6 people before I gave it to all of my participants. It was extraordinarily useful to see how they responded or what they wrote. I was able to simplify and refine my questions from there, based on their own responses. It's similar to an author publishing a novel. You need to have an editor or beta readers before you publish your findings. The same thing is said with surveys. In order to make sure that your survey is ready for a wider audience, you need to test it out on a few people beforehand. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.